Hello everyone, Ultimate Steve here, and somehow it has been about a year and a half since I last uploaded regular videos. My apologies, I've been quite busy with real life stuff. I graduated from university back in May 2024, and then I spent the next 9 months trying to find a job, and during that time I was very strongly focused on that with little room for much else. I got a job offer in February 2025, and now I'm down in Texas doing environmental testing for satellites. So I made it, yay. All those years of playing KSP must have paid off. Unfortunately, the work-life balance at my current job is a little skewed towards the work side, and that combined with, actually having to maintain the place I live in, and do all the paperwork of adulting, means that my amount of free time hasn't really improved. It's done the opposite. I have had the time to work on creative projects a little bit, but I haven't gotten around to actually picking up YouTube again until now. I can't say how long I'll be back for, but I figured I'd start with something reasonably low effort and easier to commit to. A year ago, I started talking about the Infinity Timeline, a story taking place across several Minecraft worlds I built as a kid, and I had several videos recorded and ready to go before I disappeared off the internet and left you on that lava reactor cliffhanger. This video is newly recorded, and it is what I probably should have started with, a video giving a general overview of the timeline and all of its phases, so the other videos won't be extremely confusing and without context, like pretty much every video until now. To recap, the Infinity Timeline spans 11 phases, and largely follows the adventures of the three main protagonists, Bill the Villager, the Steve, hey, that's me, and the Alex. I am the Steve, obviously, and the Alex is my brother. He's transgender and uses he/they pronouns, so when reading some reference materials from before he came out, I might slip up and accidentally use his old pronouns, though, so my apologies if that happens. But fortunately, Alex is a pretty gender-neutral name, so at least that worked out. It was prophetic a little bit, I guess. The three protagonists are frequently engaged in the pursuit of knowledge and the exploration of space, which often finds them in conflict with the primary... Hi, Rain! Hello! Let's go inside. Yeah, let's have a little cozy, story time, I guess, down near the ominous nether portal of doom, I guess. Yeah, that's alright. A nice cozy rain. The three protagonists are frequently engaged in the pursuit of knowledge and the exploration of space, which often finds them in conflict with the primary antagonist, a player known as Spider-Boy. I promise that name sounded menacing when I was younger. It sounds a little bit stupid now. But anyway, the story takes across 12 distinct phases, each taking place across several different Minecraft worlds, as well as several written works. There are a few ubiquitous pieces of technology that pop up throughout the series. Firstly, compact computers exist and are fairly widespread. Secondly, lava reactors are machines that use mystic particles, the canon version of subatomic particles, to generate electricity or other mystic particles. Mystic particles can do a lot of different things. Lava reactors were later adapted to propel spacecraft. This one, for some reason, doesn't have lava in it, but I don't want to go through the effort of switching worlds to show you one that actually has lava in it. Thirdly, mystic cobblestone is floating cobblestone, which is frequently used to create flying vessels known as skyships, which were the dominant form of long-distance transportation before elevators became widespread. And lastly, particle accelerators can be used to create bedrock, which is worth a lot of money and is often used as a very high value unit of currency, 1 block of bedrock being roughly equivalent to 9 stacks of diamond blocks in value. If I have not played through a part of the world and have nothing to show on screen, or if there is no world for that part, only story, I will just kind of cut to me sitting in front of a fireplace, I guess. Also, the Earth is a cube and orbits work weirdly. Don't ask me how this works because I don't know. A long time ago, in a village far, far away, there was a villager named Bill. He was a genius and figured out all of the math required to construct a fully reusable rocket capable of carrying about 45 blocks of payload into low Earth orbit. However, villagers cannot use their arms, so he could not build it himself. He enlisted the help of a player known as Zuma, with Z, no relation to Zuma Void, in order to pursue his dream of space. However, after the first few test launches with smaller rockets, Zuma burned down the village and severely griefed the world. The villagers evacuated to another world, vowing to never trust players ever again. So that was Phase 0. Phase 1 takes place in a survival world known as the Root World, and that is this world. And it's one of the longest phases. The Steve and the Alex played in this world, but when they went to the Nether, their memory was wiped, and they forgot all of the progress they had made up until that point and restarted in the exact same world. They went on to create a large city and an expansive rail network, and they even managed to defeat the Ender Dragon. One day, they decided to construct a TNT cannon to launch the Steve into space, built in a small island called Giant's Thumb. The launch was successful, and the Steve became the first player to enter space only for a short period of time. He flew back down on his Elytra, landing in a village, which just so happened to be the same village where Bill the Villager now resided. Bill decided he could trust the Steve and the Alex. The three of them decided to build Bill's rocket design with the goal of launching a player into orbit. They called their space agency the Notebook Space Program Minecraft, shortened to NSPM. Outside of the canon, that's an evolution of generally what I called a lot of my rocketry project as a kid, just the Notebook Space Program. So named because pretty much everything was recorded in a series of notebooks. Their space launch facility, extremely creatively known as Space Island, was cleared for construction and over the course of several months built up to support the fabrication and launch of the Iron Giant 1, the first ever orbital rocket. Many spectators attended the launch from the nearby Snowman Island, having flown in on skyships. The launch was a success, with the Steve completing 3 orbits around the Earth, conducting several EVAs, and releasing a small microsatellite before landing safely. The space program, now flat out broke, began to sell launches to interested investors, the first of whom is Emperor Pennyroyal. Emperor Pennyroyal is a somewhat powerful, very kind ruler who rules over many different Minecraft worlds, and sponsors many extravagant builds. He agreed to pay for the next several launches in exchange for being launched into space on Flight 2 of the Iron Giant. That mission was also a success. The NSPM built new upgraded versions of the Iron Giant rocket, Block 2 and Block 3, and built a space station called Space Station Wonder over the course of several launches. However, one of the rocket boosters failed to land and crashed into an inhabited island, causing everyone there to lose their memory. After a lot of investigation, it was determined that the rocket's fuel, which was extracted from nether lava, was acting as a miniature lava reactor, and could, under the wrong circumstances, produce mystic particles that could wipe memories. This should never happen in normal lava. After further investigation, a strange device, apparently a spacecraft, was found in the nether, which was emitting strange mystic particles, and was causing the entire nether to act like a very, very low-level lava reactor. By this time, they had discovered their old bases, and had hypothesized that this is why they lost their memories. After deactivating the spacecraft, they noticed the name Infinity League engraved on the side. Actually, that's not accurate. My script is wrong. This is just property of the Experimental Propulsion Division. So maybe they just came up with the name Infinity League on their own. So the canon is very, not, set in stone. Some of that might have been wrong. I don't know. They formed their own organization to investigate strange anomalies such as this one, headquartered in a Rubik's Cube, with 1 square for each anomaly. This organization is named the Infinity League, after the makers of the strange spacecraft. And it is this organization from which the name of this timeline, the Infinity Timeline, is derived, if you hadn't guessed that already. The NSPM continues to perform many space launches, roughly 50 in total, and completes the first manned mission to the moon. Meanwhile, the Infinity League also completed a particle accelerator, a bit over 800 blocks wide in order to study mystic particles and create bedrock to sell. And this particle accelerator is located in a massive ring around the root world. Now granted, I can't show it to you because we never actually played that far, but this is what canonically would happen. The Iron Giant gets too small for their needs, so the NSPM decides to build a bigger rocket. They also decide to record everything they have learned in a book called the Codex of Knowledge and spread many copies of the book over several different locations to preserve the knowledge contained within. One day, however, a massive spaceship falls from the sky, landing in a nearby world. The Infinity League investigates. Most of the ship is destroyed, but inside the ship they find several highly futuristic bombs of an unknown yield. Sometime later, a massive asteroid was detected on a collision course with the Earth, which, if hit, would destroy the world the NSPM was located in, and a few thousand nearby worlds as well. A plan is created to finish the new, larger rocket, named the Dragon-Hearted, and use it to launch one of those futuristic bombs at the asteroid in order to blow it up. However, one of the villagers deciphers some of the files on board the craft spaceship computers and warns the NSPM to not launch the Dragon-Hearted, as it would do more harm than good. His cries fall upon deaf ears, and he steals a skyship and runs away from the root world. The Dragon-Hearted was launched into the asteroid, but something goes horribly wrong as the entire near side of the planet is blasted with an enormous amount of mystic particles, destroying an area the size of Texas and erasing the memory of millions of players. The Steve sees the explosion coming and orders the immediate evacuation of the root world. Most of the villagers, including Bill, manage to escape via skyship. The Alex seals himself inside a strengthened obsidian bunker with one of the copies of the Codex of Knowledge. The Steve also attempts to reach a bunker, but he is too late. The first wave of mystic particles arrives and interacts with the massive particle accelerator encircling the root world, causing a massive cut to be made through the bedrock, causing the root world to slowly begin to fall into the void, and everything contained within to be lost. This explosion also ripped the Alex's bunker out of the ground, catapulting it several kilometers away. The Steve escapes on board the original Iron Giant rocket, which was kept in the museum, flying away just as the world fell beneath the bedrock. Now, I promise most of the phases are shorter. Phase 2 starts here, with the 3 protagonists split up, their own timelines progressing independently. Come on, where is it? I very specifically remember it being somewhere in a desert. Aha! Found it! Whoa, I got that far done with the castle? That's actually kind of great. I didn't think I would have gotten that far done with the castle. This is actually a pretty nice looking castle. The villager who had tried to warn everyone about the impending disaster escaped to a nearby survival world, where he convinced 2 local players to build an underground doomsday bunker to ride out the explosion. After a few months underground, the 3 of them emerged to find out that the explosion had mutated several nearby pigs, of which I currently cannot find any to actually show you, who are now intelligent and capable of building things. They decided to start their own space program. Ah, there's some pigs. I don't know if these are the intelligent mutated pigs, but they are pigs. And yes, this bunker is getting its own video. It is actually fairly extensive. Before I leave, I would like to just take this opportunity to shout out this. Like, I forget exactly what the term is, but it was like a celebration room for spending X amount of time underground. And at the time, it was like one of the most, maybe even it still is the most opulent room I've ever built in survival. That's a bit sad if it's still the most opulent room, but like at the time, it definitely was. I had to turn the friendly mob voices down. Villagers finally decided they liked this place. They've literally never been in here before in like the 10 years this house has existed. So anyway, I've turned their volume down so I can sit at the fireplace in peace. Bill the villager and his fellow villagers escaped the explosion on a skyship and managed to avoid the worst of the blast with most of their memories intact, and with the mutation that made their arms usable, rendering them capable of constructing their own rockets. They sat down in a nearby world, and once they got out of the destroyed area where they tried to pick up the pieces, and they began creating their own space program. Unfortunately, there was a glitch in the Xbox edition where renaming a world would delete the most recently saved world, and the world that this space program took place in got lost to that glitch. So the history of this particular space program is lost to history because I remember very little of it. The Alex emerged from his bunker, barely alive after being flung several kilometers, and began running to escape the destruction. He had barely survived, but lost most of his memory in the process, having only half of a burned, very tattered copy of the Codex of Knowledge to go by. The Codex told him that he had a brother, and he was determined to find him. His copy of the Codex said that there was another copy of the Codex safe on board Space Station Wonder, so he started his own space program in an attempt to reach the Codex, based only off of the knowledge contained in his incomplete copy of the Codex. The Steve was originally aiming to pilot the Iron Giant to Space Station Wonder to wait out the explosion, but flying through the mystic particles he lost some of his memory and struggled to control the rocket, and ended up conducting a suborbital flight to another face of the Earth that contained the Java Edition servers. On this cubic Earth, different faces are home to different editions of Minecraft. That's part of the lore, yeah. Far away, an organization known as the Social Psychological Experiments Division, or SPED for short, which sounded much more menacing to 10-year-old me, had been conducting several experiments ranging from benign to very unethical on unsuspecting players for the past several years. One of these experiments, called the Cube Wars, trapped several dozen players in various sizes of worlds and observed if they would fight each other or work together to escape. There were 5 of these experiments. It just so happened that the Steve landed in the middle of the 5th one about halfway through and helped most of the players escape that experiment by showing them how to build a rocket. Some of the players decided to stick with the Steve. They reformed the Infinity League and set about acquiring knowledge, leaving space exploration as a side project until they could get better established. This group went from anarchy server to anarchy server, never gaining much of a foothold until they found themselves very well established in an anarchy server called the Infinite Cave. Phase 3 takes place in the Infinite Cave and focuses largely on 2 other players, known as Steve, no relation to the Steve, and Jen. The Infinite Cave is another social experiment set up by the SPED, taking a lot of real-world influences from the 2B2T Anarchy server. It is a very long-running Anarchy server, where the world is infinitely deep with different layers the further down you go. By the way, this is like long before the cave update, so that has no relation. It is also a hub for scientific advancement, though often cloaked in the shadows, with multiple organizations, including the Infinity League, taking Minecraft to its limits, developing technologies so advanced that they are better described as magic. Phase 3 takes place over 3 written books, or would have if I had actually finished more than the half of the first book. The first book, titled In This Dust, chronicles Steve's adventures through the cruelty... Hello? Hi there. You wanna join the story? Hello. I see you're very interested in the story. I'm glad you are. I'm glad someone's interested. What do you sell? Oh, nice. Not bad. I mean, yeah, sure, I could do with some bread. Thank you, good sir. The first book, In This Dust, chronicles Steve's adventures through the cruelty of the Infinite Cave, encountering active and ruined bases and all manner of anomalous entities during his trip down to 100,000 blocks beneath the surface. On his way, he meets Jen, a server veteran, and encounters server overlord Spider-Boy, a ruthless player with a near-dictator-like influence over the server. He controls the Spider-Boy minecart system, the safest way to return to the surface from over 100,000 blocks deep, and he charges very high prices to use it. Steve and Jen use their newfound anomalies to create a TNT cannon capable of launching players back to the surface for a fraction of what Spider-Boy charges, earning Spider-Boy's wrath. Spider-Boy attempts to destroy them, but they are saved at the last minute by the Steve of the Infinity League, which is me, which had built up quite a presence on the server, unlocking more of the secrets of Minecraft. During the second book, Broken Dawn, the Infinity League is running experiments utilizing mystic particles for long-range teleportation. However, during a test, the Infinity League accidentally teleports the entire server to the southern face of the Earth. At the southern face of the Earth, the world breaks, and the server gradually decays from the outside in. The book covers how the server reacts to the event, with many trying to reverse it, many ignoring it, and many embracing it. The server becomes incredibly dangerous, as even on the surface, it's always twilight, allowing mobs to spawn anywhere, anytime, because the sun never rises or sets, it's always on the horizon, because you're near the South Pole. In book 3, entitled A Voxel Odyssey, despite everyone's best efforts, the server is coming to an end, with the world getting smaller and smaller, about to disappear. Spider-Boy uses his wealth to buy up all of the blocks he can and the loyalty of several hundred players, initiating Project Modus, which is a group that aims to bridge over the void faster than the void can destroy their bridge, with the intent of reaching the nearest corner of the world and reaching the far lands, which provide relative safety. In the final hour of the server, a devoted digging team reaches the center of the Earth. The lore has not determined yet what they found there, but presumably it'll be important when I write that part. The Infinity League launches a highly experimental and unproven lava reactor rocket to escape the world with a small number of their top members. It very nearly fails several times, but manages to lift off and escape the world, resisting decay long enough to take them on a trajectory to the nearest edge of the world. After a good fight and exhausting all the remaining blocks in the inventories of all players, the infinite cave crumbles into darkness, and everyone falls into the void. Phase 4. Spider-Boy's Project Modus was a complete failure. They burned through blocks and players faster than anticipated, and Spider-Boy decides to make a Hail Mary attempt to reach the far closer South Pole, knowing he will never get to the far lands. They managed to reach the South Pole with only a few thousand blocks remaining, and only 28 players surviving. At the South Pole stood a portal that led to the Earth's North Pole, which proved significantly more hospitable. Spider-Boy had grown to hate the Steve and the Infinity League for destroying the server he had ruled over, and swore revenge, even if it was the last thing he did. Meanwhile, the Infinity League's rocket, which had been named the Voxel Odyssey after it lifted off, broke up severely during re-entry, with 43 of its occupants surviving to elytra down to the surface. They vowed to be far more careful this time and hide their operations better. Using the knowledge gained from the Infinite Cave, they picked a random spot in the middle of nowhere and constructed their base inside a pocket dimension located inside 8 concentric item frames. The odds that anyone would stumble across that base randomly were extremely low. In this new base, the Infinity League grew to the most powerful they ever had been, dangerously powerful, creating several items never created before or since, including artificial permanent mystic cobblestone. In the meantime, the Pig space program is still failing horribly. The Villager space program has just about managed to reach orbit, and the Alex managed to reach orbit just barely, but was unable to locate Space Station Wonder. His oxygen ran low, and he's returned to Earth. Phase 5 largely focuses on Spider-Boy's efforts to find the Infinity League, and is partially documented in the form of a journal written by one of the engineers working for Spider-Boy's space program. Spider-Boy created a plan to find and destroy the Infinity League. The Alpha Squadron was to be his army, primarily made up of random Minecraft players recruited by starting a viral trend which would attempt to conquer the entire Minecraft Earth. These millions of players were gradually recruited by the power of psychology and memes. Spider-Boy also created a smaller but high-tech series of divisions designed to destroy the Infinity League once it was found. However, the whole taking over the world thing was a distraction. With millions of players running about, surely they would find the Infinity League's base. Spider-Boy also created a smaller but higher-tech series of divisions designed to destroy the Infinity League once it was found. One of these was the Alpha Space and Rocketry Agency, or ASRA, which developed space technologies for military purposes, including missiles and spy satellites. When the Alex returned from space, Spider-Boy was able to locate him and offered him a position working at ASRA on orbital rockets with the purpose of finding the Steve. Completely oblivious to the fact that he was working for the enemy, the Alex accepted and proceeded to pioneer the most successful series of lava reactor-powered rockets to date. Over the 2 years of military buildup, ASRA mass-produced missiles, large and small, built several space stations, pioneered the use of orbital delivery cannons and lava reactor rockets, and conducted several moon landings, becoming the second agency to land on the moon, even managing to build a small moon base. After those 2 years, Spider-Boy rapidly recruited and deployed the Alpha Squadron. It caught on, and soon a significant percentage of all Minecraft players were part of the Alpha Squadron. They succeeded in taking over about 3/4 of the planet, but like the meme it was, the Alpha Squadron collapsed as everyone got bored and left. As everything rapidly fell apart, and some of that massive army turned against Spider-Boy, Spider-Boy ordered the destruction of all advanced technologies so that they would not be found or used against him, and within a matter of days, the entirety of Azure was abandoned and their space stations emptied. As a note to my future self, I think it would be really interesting canonically if there was someone that was abandoned on these space stations, and if there was a story about them. But that's, I haven't written that yet. I might never write that. We'll see. The data was destroyed and the world abandoned. The Villager space program was one of the main factions leading the resistance against Spider-Boy, and succeeded in locating the Alex, who, upon learning the truth, managed to launch 2 lava nukes, one at Spider-Boy's capital and one at the missile launch sites, erasing the evidence before escaping. However, in the final days of the war, one person did manage to locate the Infinity League's item frame base, and out of curiosity just broke the first item frame, causing the entire dimension to be compressed into one block, and the resulting explosion was tremendously destructive, and only a few members of the Infinity League survived. The Infinity League and the Alpha Squadron were now reduced to shadows of their former selves. Now that was enough standing in front of fireplaces, I guess, because Phase 6 takes place in 2 actual Minecraft worlds. The survivors of the Infinity League, not realizing that the Alpha Squadron had collapsed, desperately threw together a massive, cobbled-together, movable skybase called Skybase Nelson, using their permanent artificial mystic cobblestone as a base, and flew as far away as they could, only stopping once they reached deep into console super flat territory, so like Minecraft, Xbox 360, super flat, like that area of the Earth. There's a drawing somewhere of which editions of Minecraft were which faces of the Earth, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to find it. There, they founded Infinity City, the crown jewel of which was Pi Tower, and created a second skybase outfitted for war called Skybase Karma. Where is that? However, as they learned of the Alpha Squadron's demise, they left Skybase Karma unfinished and turned their focus back to Infinity City. While most of the Infinity League's scientific knowledge had been lost in the explosion, they knew enough to make some progress, but due to being located on a super flat world far from the global economy, they had a chronic resource problem, as the trade volume was fairly low. They did, however, turn their eyes back to space exploration. They created a medium-sized rocket called Silver, and they built a small space station. However, resources were running too low to continue justifying the program. The Alex and the Villager space program had restarted yet again in another world, a super flat world closer to a major economic hub. They began constructing their own space station as well, but due to being unable to raise funds, they quickly ran out of resources, and decided to fuel their next generation rockets with magma cream, as that was one of the fuel... actually, hold on. Let me go to the museum. And decided to fuel their next generation rockets with magma cream, as that was one of the few fuels they could get from a super flat nether. However, a bug struck in the Xbox 360 edition of Minecraft, known as the Great Slime Winter, where most magma cube spawns were replaced with slimes, causing them to only be able to launch one more rocket before bankruptcy. By coincidence, simultaneously, both space agencies launched the Steve and the Alex on their final rockets, towards the recently rediscovered Space Station Wonder in order to find the Codec of Knowledge, and at least solve a mystery with their final flights. They both arrived at Space Station Wonder at about the same time, and the brothers were finally reunited for the first time in years. They decided to unite their 2 space programs together to form the New Notebook Space Program, abbreviated to NNSP, combining their strengths to cover their weaknesses and resuming the exploration of space. This worked out extremely well, as the Infinity League had a good way of producing money with their Bedrock Particle Accelerator, but no access to resources. And the Villager Space Program had access to a lot of resources, but no money. After having covered their major weaknesses by merging, the combined intellectual power of both major space agencies was able to usher in a golden age of space exploration. With their combined knowledge and resources, they built the Upgoer class of lava reactor rockets, with the first reusable single-stage to orbit spaceships. With these rockets, they expanded the Villager Space Program's station, which had now been renamed to... where is it? It's over there. Which had been renamed to Space Station Infinity. However, just as they were about to reach the moon again, those rockets began exploding. After every Upgoer class rocket except for the original was lost, the Upgoer was grounded, and it was determined that the mystic particles built up in the walls of the reactor, which would explode at a random time. Lava reactor propulsion was deemed unsafe. A small number of conventional rockets were rapidly developed as a stopgap solution, and gradually these rockets were evolved to support the continued expansion of Infinity Station. Deciding to skip the moon for now, the mothership Joey Tempest was constructed in low Earth orbit, and took a crew of 5, including Bill, the Steve, and the Alex, to Mars, where they constructed the first Mars base. On Mars, it was discovered that glass made out of Martian sand was resistant to mystic particle buildup, and that lava reactor rockets would once again be possible if the reactor walls were made from Martian glass instead of Earth glass. Upon returning to Earth with large amounts of Martian glass, a new generation of lava reactor rockets was constructed, capable of returning to the moon. A space station was built in lunar orbit, and it was thought that conventional rockets would be phased out, but just as lava reactor rockets were beginning to work again, an update changed villager trading mechanics, making the price of emeralds skyrocket. Lava reactor rockets work best when fueled with emeralds, and without the ability to use emeralds, lower performance diamonds were substituted, precluding moon landings. The conventional rockets were upgraded, and several moon landings were carried out using them. During Mars Expedition 2, the crew landed near Mars' North Pole. However, their base was overrun by aliens, and they had to leave early, accidentally leaving one crew behind, who later escaped on a small self-built rocket, but bringing back enough Martian sand for a few more lava reactor rockets. The Bon Jovi, the second major mothership, would first be sent to Mars, and then would be upgraded with more lava reactor propulsion and sent on a mission to Jupiter and its moons. The Star Machine 2000 was also built, a lava reactor rocket performant enough to single stage to the moon and back, even on diamonds if necessary, and when powered by emeralds, it could deliver moon-based modules. What is this? Did they change the lighting in the end? Is this new? This has got to be new, right? Okay, it was only for a few seconds. That was weird. The Star Machine 2000 was used to construct a moon base, as the price of emeralds had recovered by now. Things were looking up for the NNSP, but sadly, it would not last. Phase 8 starts with our old friend Spider-Boy. Upon learning that the Infinity League was prospering again, Spider-Boy once more vowed to destroy it. One day, a bedrock meteor fell near him, and he found it, and he was able to sell parts of it, becoming very wealthy in the process. He used this money to resurrect his old plans to go to war with the Infinity League, focusing more on advanced technologies this time. He named his venture the Alpha Army. As part of this, Azra was resurrected, and they quickly developed many rockets and created several military space stations. Ignore that thing in the background, that's different. The Infinity League was aware of this and began constructing defenses, including the secretive Enigma station. What was I thinking, naming the secret space station that was meant to, blend in Enigma? That's just, come on, the most obvious, spy station in the world. Around this time, netherite became widely available, though expensive, and the NNSP found that it worked well in heat shields and lava reactors. These advances gave way to a new generation of lava reactor rockets. One major advance was the pressurized lava reactor. Using netherite, the lava reactor power density could be significantly increased, allowing for far more powerful engines. Around this time, warp technology was developed, using the same principle an ender pearl uses to rapidly teleport the back of a rocket to where the front of the rocket was. A rocket was built to test this concept with actual ender pearls. And then, the biggest rocket in history at that point, the Upgoer 3, was built with an onboard particle accelerator to test the concept with a mystic particle that would emulate the effect of ender pearls, but could be produced rather than carried. It proved the concept, but in order to achieve the efficiencies needed to reach beyond the solar system, the reactor would have to be the size of a skyscraper. In the business, that's what they call foreshadowing. At around this time, skulk reactors were invented, which could create very powerful beams of mystic particles, capable of generating on-demand particles that had previously been impractical to make, and they could also be used as a weapon. The Infinity League directly commissioned a lava reactor rocket armored with netherite and fitted with a skulk reactor-powered laser to serve as an orbital battleship in the hypothesized upcoming war against the Alpha Army. The order of events beyond this point is not exactly set in stone, as I have not played through this part yet. Further exploration of Mars and Venus proceeded at this time, with the Joey Tempest being retired at Venus to serve as a permanent space station. And there's so much else that happens at this time, like these. This thing, which takes precisely zero inspiration from any real-world concepts. About 17 different things that are in the canon but I haven't built yet. And literally so much more, because there's tons of stuff here. But I'm skipping over a ton. That's not important, I just wanted you to realize that, how much I'm skipping over, and this video is still this long. Despite the Infinity League's best efforts, war breaks out. A large number of orbital assets are destroyed, but there is no clear winner. As the specter of mutually assured destruction looms over the world due to the large size of the two sides' cumulative weapons stockpiles, the Steve decides to activate the top-secret Project Omega. Deep beneath Pi Tower, after cutting through bedrock, a massive warp ship had been constructed, of which Pi Tower served as the habitation and control section. The ship will be launched to a nearby star so that the Infinity League could continue its work in peace. And that's where the script ends, because I didn't actually finish it a few months ago like I thought I had. So let me finish it real quick. During Phase 9, Spider-Boy rules over the Minecraft Earth with an iron fist, suppressing external development of technology and destroying all who dare to defy him. Those in the Infinity League who did not escape on Starship Infinity hastily launched the incomplete Upgoer-era rocket, the Emerald Sky, to a new incomplete warp ship, but due to major design and operation errors and the fact that it was, incomplete, instead of, jumping away to another star, they accidentally travel back in time. And this ship becomes the crashed spaceship that the Steve gets the mysterious warhead from in Phase 1. Also, this is out of order, but I just realized that I forgot to talk about the probe that crashed in the Nether in Phase 1. So during early warp drive experiments by this thing, which is very important, but this video is already long enough, several warp probes were launched, of which the Nether probe was one of them, which traveled back in time, of course. Spider-Boy is still enraged at the Infinity League and aims to clear the solar system out of its influence, bringing Azra to new heights, clearing out all Infinity League stations, taking over the Moon and Mars bases, and creating mission concepts to eliminate the Bon Jovi currently exploring Jupiter. However, the Bon Jovi returns, notifying Spider-Boy that they have discovered an asteroid on a collision course with the Earth. Excuse me, did you just push me over? Yeah. Go back to your window. Nah, you're fine. Spider-Boy, however, ignores this warning, which is presumed to be a lie, and shoots the Bon Jovi down, destroying the last remains of the Infinity League in the solar system. Despite their best efforts, Ezra is unable to replicate warp technology. But undeterred, in an attempt to find the worlds that the Infinity League had escaped to on board their starship, they developed a series of slower-than-light starships, each of which was named after a music disc, and Ezra sent these ships out to the nearest stars to see if the Infinity League was there. These ships were powered by a new experimental propulsion system, enabled by their mastery of skulk reactors, which allowed these ships to be extremely slow, but theoretically they have infinite range and infinite propulsion system and will last as long as the components don't wear out. However, as these ships would take several decades, they invented stasis, using these shrieker pods to enable... Ooh, that's kind of freaky. That kind of freaked me out there. Okay, yeah, let's get out of here. I can't focus with that sound. Ugh. Yeah, they developed these to enable the crew to remain in stasis for decades as they reach their destination. In the meantime, the asteroid turns out to be real, and Spider-Boy cannot stop it on his own. In a rare moment of humility, Spider-Boy gives up his power, distributing all of the technologies he controls across the entire Minecraft Earth in hopes that the combined strength of all Minecraft players could build enough rockets in order to deflect the asteroid. However, they can only manage about 60% of the impulse required, and the Earth seems doomed as the asteroid bears down upon civilization. However, at the last minute, the Infinity League returns in a massive warp spacecraft kilometers long, using it to fully deflect the asteroid just in time. A small landing craft is dispatched and lands at Spider-Boy's palace, whereupon the Steve, the Alex, and Bill the Villager emerge and finally make peace with Spider-Boy. Wow, that's a good poetic place to leave off. There's still more phases, believe it or not, though they are much less connected to the canon. Phase 10 takes place concurrently with Phase 3, but for story reasons is placed at the end. It is from the perspective of a player recruited by the Pigs space program to be a test pilot for their new rocket. After accepting, the player is given a small amount of training. So just in the conversion of this world, all the pigs broke. Like, instead of pigs in minecarts, they're minecarts on pigs for some reason. And, yeah, because these worlds were all originally Minecraft Xbox 360, and they're on PC now. It's just, everything's broken. This is supposed to be an adventure map, but everything's broken now. Anyway, the player is given a small amount of training, and then he is blasted into space. However, the mission goes horribly wrong as the player overshoots low Earth orbit, and ends up crashing into a giant asteroid. Embedded deep within the asteroid is a massive, partially destroyed starship. Eventually, the player discovers a talking pig named Sherry, who claims that the spaceship is from the year 2160 and was accidentally sent back in time in a warp drive accident. As the ship is out of power, and the main reactor is about to be destroyed, they cannot easily get back to their own time. After a long series of actions, one of which is meeting the Infinity League, actually, I believe, and stealing the secrets to their massive nether scale lava reactor. Like, they converted an entire nether into a lava reactor, which is just wow. What is that noise in the nether? Why is there, like, I've never seen that before. Sorry, end, not nether. Anyway, eventually they restore partial power to the ship, and they use that power to jump further back in time to an event with a lot of known energy which they will use to jump back to 2160. That event is the time that the Dragonhearted was launched in Phase 1 to deflect an incoming asteroid, which ended up having an unexplained reaction and destroying a large amount of land, as discussed earlier. Inadvertently, however, the crippled warp drive ship that's embedded inside an asteroid becomes the asteroid, and when the massive warhead hits the starship with its advanced reactor core, it causes that giant, unexplained energetic event that caused this entire timeline to happen in the first place. So it all comes full circle. Now, theoretically, there is a Phase 11, which is everything that happens after the conclusion of Phase 9, but very little of that is nailed down yet, and generally the storyline can be said to encompass Phases 1 through 10. Thank you all for watching. Semi-regular world tour videos of the builds described here will hopefully resume shortly. Thank you all for watching. Ultimate Steve, out.